We are now live. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy New Year. I think this is maybe the first. Oh no, I've done live shows since our new year, and I've definitely slurped tea into the microphone in the new year, and I've definitely hit the wire attached to my microphone and made that horrible noise in your ears in the new year. Well, we are fresh back from our retreat in Costa Rica. So let me just get the dating right here. So we went down. When did Bay and I leave? We left on the 19th, and we got to have our world famous date night at Chili's. And then we were down in Costa Rica until the 31st. So I'm going to talk today. I'm going to distinguish some of one, how the trip went, but also like, what am I bringing back? What has come alive for me through kind of what I've been holding space for. I often find in this work, especially lately, that I'm less looking out there for like, what is the thing I'm missing about leadership, and more kind of, what is the thing about leadership coming forward? What is coming to me next to be discovered and to be distinguished? So I'll share sort of like what's some of the stuff that I'm bringing back, some thoughts on leadership. I'll probably talk a fair bit about pickleball today because I haven't played pickleball in like 3 weeks, and I'm very excited to get back on the court. What else do I want to talk about? I'm probably going to talk about Magic the Gathering. And generally, I'm going to say that I've missed being in front of this camera, and it's a little weird coming back to it. I'm feeling rusty. Okay, so let me have a sip of tea with you. So context for the retreat. Every year for the last, I think it's about 6 years, the leadership container that Bay and I run, the Forge, we've included a retreat down to Costa Rica as part of it. Hey, Kendra, long time. You playing pickleball? I'm stoked to hear that. So as part of the year-long program, Bay and I run the leadership container, the Forge, we go down for a retreat. And this was the first year where we opened up attendance to allow people from the public to join. And so the way this retreat plays out in kind of the arc of some of the people that are working with us in our container, they begin this year-long container program in September. We're doing a bunch of work supporting them to start to see the places where their leadership is showing up the way it's showing up, creating the results it's creating, blah, blah, blah. Then they come down in January with us in Costa Rica. We do a bunch of work, and then we go. And so this year, we open the doors to allow people from the public that had maybe had an experience of our work somewhere else to come and join us with members of the Forge that are already deep in their work and do some of that work with us. So this was absolutely an edge for Bay and I from a number of places. One, because we've never opened it up to the public before. So the retreat has always been kind of contained and maybe protected. And part of what we want to do is we want to find more and more ways to bring this work further out into the world. And the retreat is kind of a way that people can have a lighter level of commitment into the work. You know, so when we're holding something like the Forge, it's a $10,000 commitment. It's a year of someone's life. You know, that's a big step. And so we want to find more ways that people can begin to dip their toe into the work. You know, maybe coming and watching this show or listening to the podcast or something is where you're at. And then, which is perfect. We want to provide opportunities for people to take that next step. So, so that's part of why we were leaning into this. Sorry, I noticed I'm very phlegmatic this morning and have been for the last week. So that's part of why we wanted to open the doors, is to let people come down, be in this experience with us. It's a growth edge for us, and we'd like to go to other places in the world, to explore other parts of the world, and spend time with people and be doing deep work. And that requires money. we need to make money to do it. And so this was how to begin. This is one of the ways that we saw to begin allowing this. So we had We have 12 people in the Forge this year. We had 3 other people from the public buy a ticket to the retreat and come down, and that's the context in which we spent the last 2 weeks. Now, in the past, you know, if you're a person whose career is doing stuff that to other people might look a little bit like silly or like must be nice, then you might be able to identify with some of this. But like, you know, my friends often come January and be like, all right, you got your retreat, you're going down, you know, you must be excited. And actually, my friends are much more awesome than this. They wouldn't make assumptions like that. But they were asking me, and I remember 3 years ago sharing with Bay, I was excited to go down to Costa Rica. I was excited to spend time with my people, but we could tell that there was some real heavy lifting to do. There was like some real energetic like density that as a leader, part of our work was going to be to move. And that's the nature of it. You know, we could kind of feel that, okay, got it. We're going down, but we're going to be doing some work. And if you're doing work, the work's going to work you in this line of work. There's got to be another way I can say work 3 more times to drive this point home into your forehead. And so we went down willing, you know, to be broken open by the work and blah, 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 blah. This year I was going down, I was like, I'm stoked. You know, I could feel the breakthrough that had been sort of coming into position to be created 3 years ago. It was a challenging time for the Forge and I think everyone in it, but what is starting to come forward, the expression of that vision really felt alive for us this retreat. And one of the things that was really alive for me was one of our co-leader, Darren's vision or stand for me of me doing very little. Showing up and having most of the logistics already handled, showing up and being able to simply bring my being into the space so that I can best serve the people that are best serve the moment with what I can do, as opposed to like logistics and stuff like that. And that is really edgy for me. You know, even as I'm describing it, I can feel there's a part of me that wants to resist it or qualify, be like, well, but don't worry, I know that this might sound like a king in his fiefdom and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I have within me a real commitment to work ethic and to not leaving anyone feeling like I wouldn't do the thing I'm asking of them, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And so to settle into this experience of the retreat is that's an edge for me. And it's an edge that I can see is there for me to step over if I want to cause more with my leadership and do less. If you are someone who as a leader wants to cause more in the world but do less, this is part of the edge, because most of us who have gotten anywhere to any extent in leadership have gotten there through competency, and competency scales based on what we do. And so when we set that aside, that's challenging. So anyhow, this retreat, I didn't have to do a lot, at least logistically. There was, of course, a ton of energetics to hold, a lot we were moving, but I think what I felt was that our leadership team were truly empowered in that, like not taking that work on from like, oh, we have to do this but really seeing something for themselves, which is that's when we get to create this thing as leaders where all boats rise. So super, super, super cool. I know I wrote notes somewhere. Where are my notes for this? Oh, here we go. Okay. Let's do some other logistics with regards to the retreat. So area La Fortuna, which is underneath this huge volcano in central Costa Rica called Arenal. And La Fortuna is a ecotourism hub. So it's inland, so there's not beaches. So it kind of sort of like the boho vibe is a little less there, and it's touristy, but there's sort of like the tourism feels a little more organic to Costa Rica, as opposed to, you know, with beachside towns. Of course, Costa Rica's culture is so strong that it's gonna be present no matter where and how it interacts with tourism. But La Fortuna can feel very, very authentic. And so weather tends to be kind of like milder as opposed to like scorching. There was a few days that were fairly hot, but like our weather this time was amazing. It was kind of like warm, but not oppressively slow. And for the most part, I could sleep in the evening, which is not always the case when I go down to the tropics. And then we did some pretty cool excursions. Like this time we went and did canyoning, which is something I've never ever been exposed to, which is you descend into like this giant canyon. So you rappel down waterfalls and stuff. There's like some zip lines and it's like a hike in the middle of like this deep canyon, which is incredible. Super, super cool. And one of the things I really love about this is that never in a million years would I sign up for that. And it's not because I would, guard against it. I'm not opposed to this. It's just not what I would orient myself towards. That's not, Adam would sign up for like, hey, let's all go to a video arcade and play Street Fighter. Or, let's all go to a pub together and chat and talk about philosophy. That's the stuff I'm already getting, I'm going to get more of. Whereas this is something net new, not that I'm opposed to, but just wouldn't expose myself into. So that's cool. And this experience, I promise I'm going to talk about leadership in a time, but canyoning was a ludicrous thing because first of all, everyone in Costa Rica has done this a million times. There's sort of three main things that people do in La Fortuna. One is they whitewater raft, which is awesome. Two is they zip line. And then three is you canyon. So these are kind of like the three things. These Ticos, this is like their life. They've been doing this forever. And so they're very droll about it, very casual. What for us, we're like, that's a fucking 200-foot waterfall down that I'm looking down. And so we checked it out ahead of time to make sure, like, is this something that people can do? And they're like, absolutely. We've had children as young as 5 years old and people as old as 90 go through this. And if people are confronted, there's an opportunity. They don't have to do any of this stuff. Like we have ways to work with them. So we're like, okay, great. We've done our due diligence. I don't know what they were injecting into this 90-year-old that was doing the course, but like, damn, that person must have been packed to the gills on something, because I've never rappelled in my life. And the first thing, the way this place we went to builds is you don't sort of like work your way up. I was thinking it's like, okay, we start Adam on the bunny hill, then we'll get him on the blue square, then we'll get him on the black diamond. They're like, double black. That's what you came out on. And so the double black was you get up to the edge and they tell you to sit back. Anyone that's done this before knows what I'm talking about, but you're trusting the harness because you're sitting back over, a 200-foot drop to your certain death. And there's water cascading over here to the right. And they're like, okay, here's what you do. They taught us, they trained us, blah, 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 blah. And then you begin. So you kick off and you let out some of your rope, and then you grab a hold and you come, brace your feet against the canyon, which, having never done this, I'm like, oh, this is harder than I thought. I thought this was just going to be like, wee, but I'm like, okay, first of all, I've got a death grip. I'm slowly destroying the rope in my hands as I make sure that I don't let go. And I'm like, oh, I got to balance. There's some work. And then halfway down, as I'm sort of in my head trying to manage all of this, water from 100 feet up smashes me in the head and the back as I'm trying to navigate all this. So it's a lot. It's a confronting experience. And on the backside of that, there's some zip lines and all of this sort of stuff. And so it's really cool, because what I love about these experiences is they shock our physical system a little bit, and in in the work we do at the retreat, we're really working to ontologically open someone up. And that means that you could think of it energetically or whatever, like in terms of how someone's being, there is a protection. And the process by which we open and unfold is sacred to each of us. We have stories like it should look a certain way, whatever. And part of our work in all of our work and at the retreat is to support you to better discover your own unfolding process and to better meet it with grace and adoration and reverence. But there's many ways in which our unfolding can happen. And so, sometimes it's through conversation, sometimes it's through sort of like applying a bit of pressure to the point and then letting go. And other times it's sort of like we're doing all this work emotionally that our body physically needs some sort of release, and so canyoning can be, getting smashed in the face by a waterfall. It can shock some stuff loose. So it's really beautiful what happens when we combine physicality with ontological work. There's many different ways, and you'll hear this. I've heard somatic practitioners say, the somatician is always going to point back to the body, which I think is absolutely correct. And for me, the way our unfolding and opening is there's many different pathways, and the artistry is in getting clear, like what is next and what is the unfolding, and the more dimensions in which we can see and hold that unfolding, the more access we have to it. So if you're trained or facile with somatic work, then you can see, oh, there's an unfolding here that wants to happen in the physical realm. Or if you're trained more like IFS or something like that, oh, there's an unfolding that wants to happen in terms of the relationship between this person's parts, all of that sort of stuff. So anyhow, super awesome, really cool. And then we had lots of time to hang out and to eat really nice, clean, good food with a little bit of decadence. I'm just trying to think of other highlights. I got a lot of people playing Magic the Gathering, which was amazing. I'm super stoked by that. If you've ever listened to any of my shows, you know that I think this game is the coolest thing ever, and is super fun. And so one of the things that was a real joy for me was there's a part of I'm going to call it brilliance, but we could more easily refer to it as like the nerd that I am, that is sort of like unclear how to allow that to exist in partnership with the rest of the world. There's sort of like been no way that I could form a bridge. There's this brilliant stuff I do over here, and I'm a nerd and stupid for it. And then over there, I don't know how to make the two meet. And so it's clunky. There's this crunchy navigation. And so Magic the Gathering was kind of like a gate for that, where if you get this game, then you're one of my people and we can talk nerd stuff. And if you don't, then that's fine. I know how to relate to you. It's a bit of a gatekeeper. And so, what up, Kyle Talley? If you've not heard about Magic the Gathering, it's hardly. I'm noticing this part of me that's like, don't get into an hour-long conversation with Kyle about what Magic the Gathering is. Look up Magic the Gathering. It's a game that's been being developed since 1994 and been added to every year since. So 30 years of development, incredible. And so this was sort of like this vaunted position over here where brilliance got to be, and I didn't get to bring people along. And on this trip, we really celebrated that, but also like allowed a space where people could come and learn and play. And so anyhow, super cool. I love exposing people to Magic the Gathering. I think it's just like the most amazing work, most amazing game. And totally, that's not like I'm not doing that to develop leadership. I love Magic the Gathering and I want to play that game all the time. And what I'm doing is I'm allowing that part of me to be expressed as part of the art of my leadership in the world. So that's an important distinction, because what happens with a lot of us is we're like, oh, over here I get to be a leader, do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then over here I get to play Magic, hang out with my friends, love car racing or luge or whatever you're into. And actually part of the work, part of the mastery, the artistry that we're forging, no pun intended, in this work is, to really learn how to meet the world with all of that as a function of our leadership. Our leadership is imbued in all of that. So Magic the Gathering, love that. Awesome time. Okay, so that gives you the kind of fundamentals. So there's been a few themes that were alive for me as we did this work, and one of the big themes that was, I'll give you a little more background, is going down into this. One of the tensions I've been feeling into is around the work that we do in the forge. I just got to read what Kyle's saying. I'm a nerd who is good at sports, so sort of lost my way for a minute. Appreciate you. Yes, Kyle. Yes, I am also a nerd. So for me, it was nerd who sort of was good at sports, but wasn't allowed to, didn't quite fit. So I'm here for my fellow brilliant people in athletics. Okay, so anyhow, let me find my way back there before I got distracted by magic. Must set Magic the Gathering aside, not leadership, Adam. Get yourself together. What was my train of thought there? Let's have a sip of tea and see if that brings it back. That's right. One of the tensions I've been feeling is, for the longest time, Bay and I built the Forge to meet a need in the coaching profession, which was that it was often not a need voiced. In fact, often it was below the level of even being a conscious need, but that there was a yearning for what we would call being, like the thing below the technique, the thing below the right question, the thing where we can feel something actually shifts in an interaction with another human being. So that's the work at the ontological layer. And so initially we created the Forge down that lens, right? To meet coaches in that. And then as time's gone on, we've also, it's inevitable that leadership has just been part of the growing conversation for both of us and in the Forge, and we have a leadership team. And so there's kind of like these two tracks that I was always like how I felt as a leader when I talked about my work was like trying to feed one into the other, and then the other, and sort of, it was like I was trying to nurture two different things and convince you that they were similar, but kind of, whatever. And so going down, I've been spending a lot of time thinking, what is the transcendent part of that? Like, what is the commonality in that? And so some of what I was coming into the retreat with was like holding leadership and coaching as let me see if I can get my hands around this. So leadership is the practice in being able to deepen our capacity to hold more tension. And coaching is one of the arenas in which leadership can be practiced. So for some people like myself, that's our profession. But in other places, as a leader, it's simply where leadership becomes a one-on-one exercise, a practice. Further, leadership is about moving people towards a desired future. How do we move people? And so in coaching, we're supporting someone to move towards their desired future. What is the future you want to create? And then how do we best evolve, support, develop you to go towards that? In leadership, we're working at that level, but more organizationally, or in terms of an interaction with the public, or, wherever it happens to be. And so that kind of lifting up and out of the tracks of leadership versus coaching, but they're friends, but not, it has been like alive for me a lot. And I've been looking through a lot of what's been showing up at the retreat through that lens, what is the consistencies across the board? So some of the things that I'm seeing is that, in the Forge, we do train people to coach, and coaching is really important. But the reason we do that is because that is the point at which your leadership becomes most available for us to look at. So it's sort of like in Zen, people will be like, hey, I can practice being with constantly. Like I go to the grocery store and you're telling me be with what's showing up, be mindful to what's showing up. I can do that. So why do I even come here? And in Zen, they call Zazen, sitting, as practice. And the reason you would sit in Zazen is because that is the point where there is the least amount of extra stuff between your ability to be conscious to how you show up when you meet the moment. And so for us, coaching is kind of like that version of that with leadership. When you meet someone in a coaching conversation, we're going to see all of your own judgments projected onto that person. We're going to see all the places where inside of yourself you have not yet resolved or found a way to love a part of you that you don't like. And you're going to try to change it in this person over here, subtly, and all of this stuff. We're going to see all of the ways that you don't yet trust other people because you don't yet trust yourself with this. And so that's kind of the lens through which I've been starting to distinguish this work and unfold it. So a big theme for me this retreat was the theme of standing in tension. And standing in tension without collapsing it. So this is, first of all, this is fundamental to our universe. The universe is in this continual state of like, if you look at a star is an entity in a state of tension. On the one hand, there's this incredible explosion that is pushing everything outwards. And at the same time, there's this incredible gravitational attraction that is trying to pull everything inwards and collapse it into a point. And so a star is an object in the fabric of our universe in an ongoing state of tension. And then, it can hold that tension for as long as the lifespan of the star, and then it either obliterates itself as a supernova, or it collapses into a singularity, or, whatever it happens to be. So the more we can hold ourselves open and be with tension, the greater our capacity to stand in a particular place as a leader. And what we are continually seeking to do in our lives is alleviate that tension. That's sort of like, it requires effort to stay open in the unresolved, in the tension of something not being fixed. And so as humans, what we really love are like fast answers, give me a solution, like if any of you have ever had this experience where your spouse tells you the thing that you did that they're upset about, and then like me, you tried to apologize for it so you could be done with this, that's an example of trying to collapse the tension of that moment. You're seeking to like, can we just move past this? Instead of having the capacity to stay with the tension that's being created in the moment. And so on some level, energetically, all leadership is a form of deepening your capacity to hold the tension of the moment for longer. Because if you can do that, then we can start to situate ourselves in the moment. Whereas as soon as we collapse, gone. So what do I want to say about this? I kind of want to talk a little bit about AI, but before I do that, let me pour some more tea and just see where. Yes, yeah. So I'll give you an example of a way that collapsing tension works, and this energetic need in humans, this reaching the limit of our capacity, it happens to all of us. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing shameful about it. It's not like you should be better at holding it, or you can let go of all the moralizing or the making it normative. None of that's there. But an example of how this is at play is, let's work with brilliant people. So for brilliant people like this guy, part of the tension that we learn to be unable to hold is the moment where someone might question our brilliance or might question their own brilliance, whatever. The moment where the certainty starts to fall away. There's a tension in that. People might think I'm dumb. People might have thoughts about me. People might be doubting my leadership. And so this is the point where what brilliant leaders will do is they'll kind of like collapse that tension one of two directions. The one that's often sort of held aloft, championed, is like, I don't know. I can admit I don't know. Now here's the thing. Admitting you don't know is great, except that actually collapses the tension of the moment, because now you're relieved from the tension that you might look stupid or dumb or whatever. The other approach would be to like assert authority, push, like I know above all, right? That collapses the tension in the other direction. The transcendent, the breakthrough approach where a leader can hold more capacity is to sit in, I actually don't know. I am doubting myself, and I'm going to take action whilst that's in full view of myself and everyone else. So allowing the tension of, I might not have my pants on. I might be making a huge mistake. I might look really stupid here. I'm doing my best, and I'm going to not preemptively protect myself from that possible failure. I'm just going to take a swing. That is where, instead of collapsing into, I don't know, and then waiting until you do know, or I know always, and there's never a chance where I need to doubt my, those are the two places where that ability to hold the tension falls away. We collapse it so we don't have to be with it. Just my glasses there. There's something about these headphones that is not comfortable with glasses. So on some level, anytime we're doing any leadership work, where I'm looking is, what is the tension that this person is in this moment seeking to collapse into, to alleviate for themselves? And where is there for me to stand just a little bit longer? Can I hold this tension in this moment open for a little while longer? And so there's like a million ways this can look. It can look like someone making a joke to collapse the tension of the vulnerability that they're feeling in the moment. And so if I get you laughing with me and self-deprecating, you've had this experience where you can feel yourself kind of, it's genuinely funny, but you can tell that you're laughing away from something. And what's happening there is that unconsciously there's a tension in the space, and neither you nor the other person are able to hold it long enough. And as a result, the humor is a way to collapse away from it. So we're constantly doing this, like another place that this is really commonly the case is desire, right? To hold ourselves open with desire creates a lot of tension, because desire is about what you want versus where you are. That is inherently a state of tension. And what humans do with that tension is we either seek to fulfill on that desire. There, now that tension goes away, we've collapsed it, or to dim our desire. If I diminish what I want for myself, then I don't have to be in that tension. And so a lot of leadership practice, and indeed, like a lot of intimacy, sacred sexuality practices, a lot of this sort of stuff is often termed in this idea of like holding fire. Can you hold the fire of your own desire? Which, as an aside, there's places where I can do that, and there's places where I don't like to, I don't want to. The one easy example would be like, well, actually one of the edges I'm practicing with right now is sweets. And like letting myself feel the yearn for something without actually fulfilling on it. Can I sit in that tension? Can I savor the sense of it? Okay. So one, that was a big theme that I've been kind of bringing back with me, that I've been present to, that I've been noticing. Another theme, and I'm sure if you followed my work for any period of time, this probably won't be too new, but is recognizing the work that people are already doing. Here's the thing. Hold on, I gotta not Don't ever start a sentence with "here's the thing," Adam. That's very condescending. One of my teachers talked about the vine, which ayahuasca is a vine, but one of my teachers talked about the vine as this very, very intelligent plant where it'll move and it sees, like, I'm here, I want to move towards the light. There's a branch here and there's a gap. And what do I do? And the vine is always feeling into that gap. It's always expanding a little bit more. So it's sort of like growing in this direction. It's growing here. How do I cross that gap? It's a very, very, very intelligent sort of entity, vines. And this is the case for humanity too. Like any of us really want to do is move towards the light at the end of the day. That's what we're seeking on some level. And so a significant part of what goes missed is that we as humans believe we are missing the mark. We're not doing things the right way. It should be like my process unfolding should be harder. It shouldn't feel the way it does. It should feel different than when it does. It's because of this, because of them. We have all of this stuff that makes it hard to just celebrate the unfolding that we're already actively in. And if you're someone that's like, yeah, but Adam, sometimes you really need to like move people forward. It's not enough just to celebrate them. I got news for you. That's the part of your own process that you can't trust. If you feel other people need to be moved forward, then you're doing the same thing to your own process. You have a hard time just trusting your own unfolding. And so as a result, what that tells us is if you have a hard time trusting your own unfolding, you are probably rushing your process. You are probably forcing it forward, and you're probably creating in your own life on some level an experience of like being shoved, like not being able to unfold and meet things as they open with you, but instead like getting shoved forward into your life. It's really cool because whatever is happening out there is happening in here. We give the world the same medicine and poison that we give ourselves. And so there's a lot of grace for each other in this available if you want to offer it to people, which is, when someone, this is a digression, and I'm going to try to bring it back to this. But I was at the bank. I needed to transfer money to the people in Costa Rica. I need to do a bank transfer. No, I'm not under duress. Yes, I know these people. Yes, I have done business with them. I've got this down to a T. Anyhow, the lady at the bank, tattoos, cool look. Her energy was sort of like, well, I'm going to do what you tell me to do. And then I just gave her the stuff and was like, can you send the transfer here? And then she sort of like, well, it didn't work. Kind of like a blame. I'm like, these are the details. I'm happy to work this through with you. But she was really stuck on this idea of like, well, I did the thing you said to do and it didn't work. So how did I get onto this digression? Maybe I just wanted to talk about my experience of this bank machine. What a weird digression I followed myself into. Let me finish this anyhow, and we'll see if I can stick the landing. If not, then that's fine. I'll just stumble and fall on my feet. She was really caught on this idea, like I told her to do something and we did it wrong. And like, so I just asked her to like, well, can we just slow down? Like my sense is here's the big number that should probably go in there. I was like, first of all, you shouldn't just do everything I tell you. I'm the bozo over here. Anyhow, we put it in, it worked fine. And so, yeah, how did I get on this? Whoever's watching, remind me on, I promised that we were going to stick this landing, but I can't remember how I found my way down this tributary. So anyhow, let's come back and try to rejoin, which is, and I'll probably pick this up as I go, but recognizing the work that we're already doing really allows us to settle in away from here's how it should be going. Because as long as we're stuck in a here's the way it should be going, kind of like that teller, right? Like, well, but this is what's needing to happen. She couldn't just allow in our partnership to unfold like, well, there's a way. We can find our way through this. So we create a lot of added friction that doesn't need to be there. Okay, what else has been showing up? Growing our capacity to sit in tension. I think the other thing that's really been present for me in our work over this period is to be in the practice as someone holding a clearing for more leadership to show up, is checking in with people, or rather not moving on from the things that we'd rather have hidden. And again, this requires being able to sit in that tension. Because the only way to notice that we'd rather have something hidden is to sit with that feeling of, I want to hide it. And then we can collapse the tension of that moment by hiding it, or by making a joke, or by giving an answer, right? We can go past it. And so a lot of what there is to do is just to notice that there is a something happening in the space that is seeking to collapse that tension, and just standing for that not collapsing. Now what we don't want to do is force this other person to address that thing. So for example, if I had someone who they were using humor to try to move us away from a moment, there's a part of me, the part of me that doesn't yet trust my own unfolding, that would be like, no, like you need to look at this. You need to face this. You need to address this, like kind of old school British, like hit you with the switch, that kind of energy. Like, we got to turn and face this. And what that does is it collapses the tension for me, because then I can be like, all right, we're moving forward, right? I don't have to sit in the tension that this might take longer than I want it to, than I would prefer. Let me have a sip of tea here. Let me find my way back into that train of thought. We want to hold that tension. We want to not collapse into it. My apologies. My brain is all over the map today. Okay. So in any event, I'm probably not going to be able to pick that one up either. That's the tension anyhow, that we're always seeking to kind of like close it for ourselves. And oh, that's right. I found my way back in with a bunch of stumbling. By having that part, you could probably even feel it there right now, where there was like a part of me that wanted to joke away from feeling stupid or feeling foolish or feeling like embarrassed. And by doing that, even there was a part of me that was like, oh, I could end this stream. I could close this. Let's make some jokes. And our work in leadership is to stay in that moment, to hold that embarrassment or whatever it drives forward, so that that person can step forward into it, as opposed to closing that for them, as opposed to thrusting them into it. And so that's the challenge. Look at that. I'm practicing in the moment. That's the challenge that we're working with in leadership, is to be able to stand in that tension without closing it for anyone and allow ourselves to actually hold it. Whew, that was a little bit vulnerable. Cool. Okay, well, let me just breathe into that moment. Hey, Rachel, thank you. Sit in that tension myself. There's a few things I can distinguish for myself just in you can hear it in my voice, right? There's a switch as I be with the tenderness that showed up there. And so I'm kind of holding two things, right? I'm allowing my humanity in the space, and then I'm also practicing leadership in this moment, distinguishing what's going on, what's present for me. I can do the latter as a way of avoiding, my humanity. So it's always a tightrope that we're kind of walking, a balancing act between those two. And part of what's in my thoughts, like, well, I don't want to rush off of this, but I want to honor the moment. And then now I'm back in my head. So leadership, capacity to sit in tension. I've got Pongo who wants to make a guest appearance, but he's not going to get to. There was something else that I was going to close down on today. Let's have another sip of tea and see if it comes forward. Guests for our show. So the last thing I've been working, this podcast has gotten to the point where there's a lot of, I don't have to do much searching for guests. I think, well, I'm going to hold it out. The transformational leader, the place you want to be a guest. And I have a commitment to the integrity of this show, which is those moments that we just went through together. I want to create those moments because that's where there is, as my friend Ernest puts it, there's truth in the space. I'm not interested in the performative nature of it or whatever. Now, everyone will meet truth at their current capacity to do so. So it's okay. There's no sort of like, look at this person, they can do it 10x compared to your measly 0.1x. All that matters is that we are meeting truth in our capacity to currently do so. And so with guests on this show, I've been doing work to distinguish I'm a yes to having people come on, but what is the invitation that I'm inviting them into? And initially it was like, come on and be coached. And then, but what I found was that guests would choose into that, but they didn't really know what they were saying yes to. And it was clunky, and their coach, they didn't really want to move something forward. They weren't seeing this show as an opportunity to do so. So they're sort of like, oh, I'll be coached because that'll provide a way to, so coaching was kind of a means to an end. And frankly, if I'm honest, super edgy for them and me, edgy to allow that. So I'm like, there's some gift to that, but that kind of conversation I want to make sure is fully empowered, that people are really clear what they're choosing into. That's on offer. I love those opportunities, but we want to make sure that that's not something people are doing because they think that's the only option. The alternative is I want to challenge my guests more, not to share their expertise, but to explore the places where their expertise stops making the difference, or where their expertise or their history or their inspiring story or whatever they've overcome becomes the next hurdle. So finding that moment where ontologically it doesn't matter how much background we have, here's where we're doubling back in on ourselves. And so what I don't want to do is leave guests feeling like they're getting gotcha'd. I don't want to do that. That never feels good. I want people to be clear on what they're choosing into. And so that's the practice I'm leaning into, is inviting guests from a place that's really powerful, where it's like, look, you're welcome to share about your stories, your beliefs, your thoughts about leadership or whatever, but we're going to examine those. We're going to really take a deep look, and I'm going to challenge some of those assumptions with you. So, one of my friends at the retreat was like, I didn't like the last, I found it kind of boring. Great. Feedback on guests and how it comes. It doesn't have to be about the guests themselves, but more like, what would you want to hear more of in the space of that conversation? Like, assuming that the problem wasn't with the guest, but what would you want more in the energetic field between Adam and that guest? That's really valuable feedback for me, because that allows us to co-create what there is to be created in the space here in this conversation on the transformational leader that allows more opening. So you don't have to send me a long thing, but to the extent for any of you that listen to episodes with guests have sort of like, I want more, let us know. Really, really, really value your feedback. Okay. I think it's going to be a shorter episode today. I feel like I've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. Let's have a look around. Oh, I'm going to do some plugs though. First of all, if you are like, man, this guy's a jerk, but I kind of like him, and I kind of want to have a little more taste of this work that he's speaking to, the first step is recognition. So if at any point through any of what I share, you recognize yourself, that's step one. If any of this you're taking on like, yeah, I should do that, that's not really what we're aiming for. It's more about being able to see yourself, because if you can start to see yourself, then you can situate yourself in your process, and then you can start to become more graceful and better able to allow your process to unfold and then lead as that unfolding. So step one is recognizing yourself. If you recognize yourself in anything that I share, any of this process or my own embarrassment as I stumble with what I'm trying to say. If you recognize yourself in any of that, that's step one. Step two, if you want to go deeper than mere recognition, come to the intensive. The intensive is in May 26th through 29. It's an opportunity to be in a community of people that are learning how to unfold and to lead as they're unfolding and from their unfolding, and people that are committed to both potency in how they meet the world, but also grace. And on top of all that, more important than any of it, is a frig ton of fun and joy. Also, if you want, give yourself the gift of being in Victoria in on like May Day long weekend kind of time. It's amazing out here. It's so beautiful, so picturesque. The climate is gorgeous. The hotel that we take is right on the water. There's like harbor taxis you can take if you want to do that. You'll meet people. You'll have an amazing time, and you'll go back having unfolded. So that's May 22nd through May 29th. We've got early bird pricing up until the 1st of May. So check that out. I'm going to put a little link here. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm just going to speak it into the space. It's evergrowthcoaching.com/the-intensive. And I'll probably put it in the comments after the fact. It's going to be amazing. And we're really excited to share that space with you. Okay. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend. And go play a lot of Magic the Gathering. I hope you get to play a bunch of pickleball. And hope that spring's starting to unfold for you. Pura vida.